Hello, and welcome to Say It Naturally. If you've ever felt unsure about your pronunciation or hesitant about using your voice in English, you're in the right place. I'm Jenny. I'm an English pronunciation and neurolanguage coach. And in this podcast, I share insights, reflections, and simple ideas to help you feel more at ease, more confident, and more natural when you speak. And if you're a teacher, I'll also be sharing occasional teacher's notes you can take into your classroom. I'm really glad you're here. Before we begin, if you found this podcast supports you in some way on your language journey, you're very welcome to follow or share it with someone who might find it helpful too. Thank you. Now, today we are looking at connected speech, and I'm not going to go into any specifics today, but I'd like to just share some of my insights, having worked with several clients recently on their own pronunciation. Now, the first thing to know and to understand is that written English and spoken English are very different because when we speak, we naturally connect our words and phrases together, not word by word, but we link words together, we add extra sounds in sometimes, and we also remove other sounds. And this is all to help our mouths and tongues move between the words and phrases as easily as possible. Because, as I've said before, we are naturally lazy, and I don't think this is unique to English. I think it happens in many different languages, but as I'm focusing on English, this is where my information comes from. One thing that I always say to my clients is that connected speech is not something that you need to use in order to be understood. However, it can be really helpful for your listening comprehension. And once you start to identify the patterns in spoken English, not just the written forms, it can be game changing in your understanding of what fast and fluent speakers are saying. And you don't need to understand or master every aspect of connected speech either. Often just having an awareness or some simple understanding of specific patterns can be enough to begin noticing when you're listening to other speakers and also experimenting with your own voice. So even though you don't need to use it to be understood, playing around with it can help you notice it better when you hear it. One thing that I would say is that rhythm and flow contribute a lot more to our natural speech patterns than perfect individual sounds. And I think this is one of the reasons that we have so many varieties of English accents around the world, and yet we can still communicate with each other. We can still comprehend and understand each other, even though we have different vowel sounds as well as different consonant sounds. It's actually about the rhythm of the language. It can be really helpful to practice short phrases or short chunks of language rather than isolated individual words, because this helps our brain build more realistic speech patterns. And if you're a teacher, here's something you can take into your own classroom. Learners are often taught English as a series of individual words or even word lists, but spoken English doesn't work that way. It flows, it connects, and it moves as a continuous stream of sound. You don't need to teach every rule of connected speech in detail. However, you can begin by helping learners notice patterns. This can be as simple as highlighting how words link in a short phrase, or encouraging learners to repeat natural chunks of language rather than the isolated words. When learners start to hear and practice language in connected chunks, their listening improves and their speaking becomes much more fluid and more natural. Small moments of noticing can have a lasting difference. So the key thing to remember is this: English is not spoken word by word, but as a connected flow. And the more you notice these patterns, the more natural your speaking and listening can become. And this idea of noticing brings us to something even more powerful. In the next episode, we'll explore how curiosity can completely change the way you learn and why it's one of the most valuable tools you can bring to your language development. If this episode has resonated with you at all, you might like to follow the podcast or share it with someone who you think could benefit from hearing it as well. Thank you for listening today. I hope something in this episode gave you a little more ease or a new way of thinking about your voice. And if you'd like more support with your own pronunciation or confidence, you can find me at excellenceinenglisheducation.com. I work with learners and teachers who want to feel more comfortable and natural in their spoken English. There'll be a new episode of Say It Naturally next week, and I'd love for you to join me again. Until then, take care of yourself and your voice.